on the agenda. Certainly, you know, I've discussed individually, you know, at length my opinion on this, and sometimes it's important to get the perspective. You know, if somebody introduces something, you know, what perspective are they speaking of? We all know that I did spend 10 years on a local school board, even serving as president of that. But I think it's just as important, if not more important, the perspective I have as a residential property owner and a commercial property owner in a growing community that is also in a growing county. So I think, certainly I empathize with the schools and what they need, but at the same time, I view this as a way, to collect funds that offset the cost of new buildings, when that happens. And so I would like to lead off with today we're not really deciding whether we're going to pass one or the other, right? There is no enabling legislation, whether it's a building permit fee or whether it's the VSA model in Dover to allow us to pass either one. Today the question is, and the task is, are we going to direct the county staff to work with local legislators to move forward to create enabling legislation? And that's, what I'm here today asking for. Certainly, in reviewing both, I think the past county council got it right when they did not vote to support the VSA. That is a model that could be used, but I'm a strong supporter of the Kent County building permit fee. To me, that, doesn't, the VSA model in my mind really affects a certain segment, which a lot of times we argue the housing in this county is becoming overpriced. And I think the VSA would have a negative effect versus the building permit model, which affects everybody. But at the end of the day, everybody pays for school construction when you're paying a tax bill. So that's really the question today, is what direction we would go, and our choices that I put forward is, the building permit fee and the VSA model. And once again, my reasoning for the introduction is more of an effort to protect the equity of the people in the communities that have existing structures in their school district. They've been paying, whether it's decades or just one decade, into the existing buildings there. And as, if you can think of an example, when building capacity is reached, 100% of the time, the referendum passes. When it's building capacity related. So we know we're going to pass the referendum, but we're not putting any money aside for the people that are not offsetting the building capacity. And that's where we really need to collect the money and, in my mind, protect the existing landowners and the existing taxpayers. So I've mentioned the Kent County building permit model. I'd like to just, identify some of the, if we're discussing what we're going to push forward in the enabling language, in the Delaware Code, this is enabled with the wording of they can collect an amount not to exceed 0.5% of the construction value applicable to said, I'm sorry, that's for fire companies. For the school, it's an amount not to exceed 1.25%. Now theirs is a little bit lower, and we could do the same thing, but their enabling legislation allows them to go up to a 1.25% of the construction value applicable to said building permit application, providing funding for the local share of any school capital construction program, having received a certificate of necessity. And to me, that's important. These aren't just projects that they're deciding to do. The DOE has very specific guidelines on how you can obtain a certificate of need. So in putting this money aside, it's not to, this still has to go through the certificate of need process in Kent County, and I'm proposing that we would do the same thing in Sussex County. The surcharge shall not be applicable to an application for a building permit having a construction value of $30,000 or less. In Kent County, they do $60,000, so that is something that's enabled to $30,000. We can make it $90,000. We can make it $60,000. I'm not a supporter of, if you're going to build a deck, you really shouldn't be offsetting school capacity with your building permit fee. I don't think that's fair. But once you start getting to the $60,000, $90,000 range, are you building, a spare bedroom, things like that? So we won't catch fences. It's not an effort to collect it from people putting up decks. And those are things that we could tweak. If we model it after Kent County, they have tweaked theirs, but this is, the main bullet points of the enabling legislation. So certainly I would like to open it up to, to see the support.
Well, thank you, Mr. McCarron. I'll go right down the line. Mr. Lloyd, do you have any comments?
Okay, we'll do it like that.
That way everybody gets to...
No, that's fine. Sorry, I didn't mean it any other sort of way. Well, I'll just say I can understand the rationale behind the increased pressure by development and growth that's put on all services, as the lady pointed out. It's not just the schools that feel the burden, but what's traditionally been borne or managed, we'll say, by the state and voted on through a referendum. I kind of agree with Steve's rationale, the idea that everybody that's been here, that's been contributing to capital costs and new construction, are expected to go into a voting booth and vote for basically more taxes on themselves to pay for the capacity as a result of the influx of people that are coming here. So by offsetting that local financial burden to whether it's through a VSA model by taxing major subdivisions, I will say, or through the impact fee process, makes sense to me. I've read both the VSA as proposed from the past. I'm in alignment. I don't agree that one as proposed was appropriate. But when I compare the two, I see more pros through the impact fee model for several reasons, and I guess I'll just pull them up and just go through it. And then we can, talk about cons as well, but I like a version that's tailored to the county. That's something I was very consistent about. I don't like the idea of giving away, decision authority. I like that the control remains with the county. I think this would be an opportunity with enabling legislation to enact something if it's deemed to not be working, or it's not equitable, or there's not enough transparency, or something of that nature. We would always have the ability to take that back. So I liked that aspect of it. And it's still in there's no need to recreate the wheel. So looking at Kent County's language, I think it was very well thought out. I think it was well written. And so for that reason, I'm interested in proceeding forward with the discussion and looking at if we want to amend the Kent County model to implement it here. I'm in favor of that. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Ms. Grunebaum, do you have any comments?
Yes. First of all, I want to say that I am a strong supporter of a mechanism to ensure that the people who move into this county pay their fair share of the amount of money it takes to build our schools and manage our schools. During the campaign, this was a big topic for me and something that I spoke about a lot and was very strongly in favor of. At the time, I was focused on the VSA model, which even at the time I thought needed some alterations and corrections. I am pleased and happy to join my two other colleagues in proposing that we take that we look further and deeper into the impact fee, the Kent County model, because I think it holds the greatest promise for achieving the results that we want to achieve. I think that this is a matter of, as I've said, a matter of equity, that the current taxpayers don't carry the full burden of the cost of additional schools, but people who move in pay their fair share. I think it's a matter of the county appropriately participating in sharing the costs of the building of the new schools, and as you've pointed out, Matt, have some county control over how that's formulated and how that's done. So I appreciate Mr. McCarron's leadership on this, and I join him in strong support of the endeavor.
Thank you. Mr. Rieley.
I'm wondering if I even need to comment because it appears we have three votes, but, we just had a conversation about food insecurity and the fact that people are living on a knife's edge budget-wise. We've had testimony in the last couple of months that tells us that for every $1,000 a home price increases, 381 Delawareans are priced out of owning a home. We hear continuously the complaint that rents are outrageous, and they are. in my opinion. And, all of this, we are trying to promote workforce housing, affordable housing. We're going to have a conversation probably the next few weeks about homelessness. And I'm hearing numbers of another 1.25% potentially as a permit. Well, maybe I'm a little older than most of the people in the room, but I remember when the argument was being made in favor of establishing slots in the state of Delaware, and they said, well, this money will go to the schools, and the schools will be well-funded forever. Well, we see where that went. The argument for, and maybe some of you don't remember this or weren't aware of it, but the selling of the concept of 4% transfer tax, that's Delaware's version of an impact fee on new housing, on all housing, really. And that money was public safety. The county gets 1.5%, which we spend primarily on public safety. The state kept 2.5%, which is supposed to go for infrastructure, roads, schools, infrastructure needs. I mean, to me, it'd be cleaner and easier to tell the state, if you need more money for schools, increase the transfer tax to 5.25% instead of 4%, and keep the county out of it. And the principle of keeping the county out of it is, it has never been the responsibility of the county to act as a fundraising agent mechanism for schools, or roads, or prisons, or hospitals, or police, although we do spend, additional money for state troopers. I mean, all of these things are the model of how Sussex County and the state of Delaware operates, where these services are delivered by the state, not the counties. We are not New York, we're not New Jersey, we're not Connecticut, Pennsylvania, where the counties do that. Here we do not. And when we begin to break down, that division of responsibilities and begin to make the county the agent for raising revenue for the schools, I think we go down a path that, will eventually lead to us being the primary responsibility of schools. And if that's the model the state wants to go for, then, that's a major change in policy. And I understand and recognize the desire for quality schools. I wish we had better schools, quite frankly, because everybody benefits from good schools. I just think philosophically I can't support the notion of the county acting as the agent. And although I will agree with my colleagues that the VSA program, where the decision-making process was not ours in how the money was handled after being collected, in the permit model, we would have control, and that, to me, is far preferable. Otherwise, it just goes into the same place where the revenue from the slot money went, wherever that was, So, I understand, the visceral desire to make the people that are moving here pay the freight. Let's soak the people that are moving here. They're the ones that are responsible for this. But if you're going to hit them, you're going to hit your own sons and daughters that are trying to buy their first home too. And you just raise the cost of housing for everybody. And the people that are living on the knife's edge, now suddenly housing is just that much further out of reach, and all the problems that cascade as a result of that. So I do not favor the county getting in the middle of this fundraising concept. Don't.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any more comments?
I'll just, Mr. Rieley, and I respectfully, we've had certainly discussions about this, and certainly it's a difference of opinion. But respectfully today, there will be a day in the future where, if you had to pick one or the other is the question today, which, or no, because we don't want to do either, but you will certainly have time in the future when we decide, where if this is successful, where you have the chance to, share your concern about, doing this in general, so, or at all. I guess the question today is if you had to choose one or the other, which one would you want to choose, or none? So,
I don't think it's our, it falls under our bailiwick of responsibilities to act as fundraising agent for schools or for DelDOT or for DENRAC or any other, function that has traditionally belonged to the state. I know we're going to have this discussion soon about fire companies too. And, that's another one where, we're going to be asked to accept a heavier burden of our financial responsibility. It's a trend. Maybe that's what the people of Sussex County want. If it is, then I'm sure it'll come to be. But as things are created and structured right now, this is not our responsibility. This is the state and the local school district's responsibility. And the state could address this if they chose to. They're not choosing to, and I'm not sure why.
The one thing I think we're looking at this differently, because it's I hear a lot of, this is collecting revenue for the schools. And I'll say this again. If the vote is to build the school's getting built. So if it's $120 million to build a high school, this money does not serve anybody but the taxpayers in that district. The school's still building their $120 million high school. It's, do we have $40 million set aside to go to that $120 million? So the school got nothing. This absolutely nothing, because they're still building the same project they would have built whether they had that money set aside. That money is set aside to insulate the effect to the existing taxpayer. And that's, I think, where the mentality is different, is I'm trying to insulate the local taxpayer. The school's getting built one way or the other. This is only in an instance where a certificate of need is filed and a referendum is passed. As long as there wasn't enough money set aside, but the local share is born. The state's putting in 60% in this group's district. The state's putting in their 60%. The local share is 40% for Cape. So it's what percentage of that 40% do the people that have been here for decades have to pick up? And that's what I'm trying to mitigate. That is the whole purpose of this conversation.
Every home that's sold in each district is paying 4% transfer tax. So if you're selling $500,000 homes in the Cape District, 2.5% of that $500,000 price tag goes to the state, ostensibly for infrastructure, roads, schools, other infrastructure perhaps. So there is a mechanism in place currently that generates district-specific revenue. Now, where does it go? It'd be nice to have an accountability there, but I don't see that in the future. But the Cape should have, and that's maybe a flaw too, that maybe the Cape has excess revenue because of that, and maybe Greenwood and Woodbridge, are lacking in funds, or Laurel, because they don't have as much construction. But that would be the same problem with the permit system. So here, this is where I think this problem needs to be solved at the state level and not the county level. That's just my opinion on it.
Okay.
I would just say that if the state upped their percentage to 80%, there's still a local share that's born locally. And as somebody that has properties that have been around decades, when there is an additional need for school capacity and your properties have been there for decades, there should be a pot of money set aside, because we've been paying retiring bonds. The state, the state is picking up their tax. There's always going to be a local component. Are we going to put money aside? Because to be honest with you, 66% of the state's already doing this.
Some of the school construction is a result of schools being replaced also. So that investment is now off the board, and we're replacing it with new construction, which existing taxpayers also benefit from.
I think we're getting into a
Ms.
level of
Birnbaum?
detail. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I'm
And then
apologizing.
after Ms. Birnbaum and Mr. Lloyd, we're going to go ahead and close this up, because we could be here all day.
We could. and it's not the first time we've had these discussions. But I think we are starting to get into a level of detail that is not necessary at this moment.
Exactly.
I think at this moment, the question is whether to approve the asking for the staff to go ahead and bring back a specific recommendation with regard to what an impact fee would look like. At that point, given the details contained in that, would seem to me to be the appropriate point to have some of the detailed discussion that we're having. I do want to say two quick things, which is that the RTT, the Realty Transfer Tax, is paid on existing houses as well as new houses. Therefore, it is not properly called an impact fee. Secondly, I would say that the effort that we're putting forth here, the idea we're putting forth, is better characterized as a taxpayer relief effort than as taking a role away from the state. This is taxpayer relief for the people who live in the county, who are paying for the schools and are paying for the new and additional construction needed by the incoming people who are not contributing to it.
Okay, I'll just say, yes, thank you, Mr. President. I think it sounds more like your basis, John, is that it's the state's purview of responsibility, so leave it with them. But and I can understand that. But to your comment about those on the brink or at knife's edge facing food insecurity, that this might push them over the edge. I don't think anybody that's pulling a $60,000+ permit is on the brink of food insecurity. So I think that kind of moots that point, although I can appreciate the math and as a percentage, and it's a sliding scale. I understand all that. But the other being your comment about rent rates increasing. I see that as solvable by housing supply, which is something that the working group is working on. And so when you said those two items, I think there's very specific counters to that, and I don't think they're super relevant to the conversation, but that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Okay, at this point, we are going to close this up, and Mr. McCarron, I think you have a motion.
I do have a motion, Mr. President.
Please read your motion.
I make a motion to direct county staff to craft proposed legislation to present to local legislators reflecting the building permit fee allowed in Kent County in relation to school construction funding.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Grunebaum. Any questions on this motion? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. Mr. McCarron.
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd.
Yes.
Ms. Grunebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Rieley.
I'll vote no.
Okay, I'll vote yes. Motion carried.